Hey guys, it's Julian, let's get into it. Walking into a dark cave, a young adventurer named Rent Fina stumbles upon a huge snake-like monster. He's too scared to move as the creature lets out a loud roar, showing off its many sharp teeth. The monster moves closer and closer, and Rent remembers his goal of becoming one of the top-ranked mithril-class adventurers. Suddenly, the creature attacks and swallows him whole. When Rent wakes up, he's shocked to find he's turned into a full skeleton. He can't believe what he's seeing. The story then takes us back to earlier that day before Rent ended up in the cave. As he gets ready for his adventure, he thinks about his current low bronze rank and how he wants to visit his scholarly friends who are always busy with their research. Rent arrives at the Adventurers Guild, looking at the job board for something that fits his low bronze status and abilities. He sees a variety of jobs listed, like protection, collecting herbs, and gathering materials. While he's reading, 3 young guys come up to him. One asks if he's planning to go to the Labyrinth of the moon's reflection again. Rent says he might if he doesn't find any better jobs. Before they leave, one of the guys remarks how hard Rent works every day. Finding no appealing jobs, Rent decides to head to the Labyrinth of the moon's reflection. He explains that he prefers solo adventures because he doesn't feel skilled enough to be useful in a group. Even after 10 years as an adventurer, he's still only a bronze rank. Rent jokes that the only rank lower must be wood. Despite this, he is able to make a living by hunting monsters and selling the magic stones and materials to the guild. When Rent reaches the labyrinth, he's both surprised and thrilled to discover a hidden passageway. He figures out that this part of the labyrinth hasn't been explored yet and hopes to find rare magical items or weapons. As he steps through the main entrance, he comes face to face with a massive creature. It's like a giant snake but with human arms and a mouth full of sharp teeth. Rent realizes it's a dragon, the most powerful and fearsome monster in the world. His whole body is telling him to run, but the overwhelming presence of the dragon makes it impossible for him to move. Paralyzed with fear and unable to even lift his sword to defend himself, Rent is tragically killed by the magnificent dragon. Back in the present, Rent is puzzled about how he's still alive after the dragon ate him, especially now that he's just a skeleton. He figures out he's become an immortal, undead creature, but as a mere skeleton, he's vulnerable to Priest's purification magic, which could easily destroy him. Rent thinks about going back to the village, but quickly realizes that wouldn't be a good idea in his current state. So, he wanders through the labyrinth, planning his next move. He considers asking the next adventurer for advice, but then remembers he can't talk as a skeleton. Suddenly, another skeleton monster approaches him. Rent readies his sword and charges at it, but as he does, he notices how the sword is much heavier now due to his lack of muscles. As he raises the sword to cut the enemy skeleton, the weight of it overpowers him and causes him to fall over. Luckily enough, the attacking skeleton also falls and loses a leg. As it struggles to reattach its leg, Rent wonders if he has new abilities as an undead. His skeletal body starts to glow with spirit energy, which he uses to enhance his strength. He manages to lift the sword and crush the skeleton in 2 swings, absorbing its spiritual energy. Rent recalls a conversation with a beautiful woman who told him monsters can become much stronger than humans through existential evolution. For example, with enough time and experience, a skeleton can evolve into a ghoul, a much stronger and dangerous monster. Inspired, Rent decides to defeat more monsters in the labyrinth and evolve into a ghoul himself. Meanwhile, the woman thinks about Rent, as he hasn't visited her for a while, and she decides to cook dinner herself. Back in the labyrinth, Rent is busy defeating skeletons and gathering their energy, eager to face stronger monsters. He then encounters a slime. Rent knows that physical attacks aren't very effective against slimes, and he doesn't have the ability to use offensive magic at the moment. The two face off. The slime launches parts of itself at him, but Rent dodges and charges, successfully slicing the slime in half with one blow, destroying its core. Rent collects the slime's core and liquid, explaining that the acid becomes harmless after the slime's death, and he plans to sell the liquid to pay for his room at the inn, as it's a popular cosmetic item used by women. At the guild, Sheila, the woman at the counter, is talking with a co-worker about a new and inexperienced adventurer who's looking for a party. Sheila mentions that there are no openings for a newbie in any party at the moment. She had planned to ask Rent if the newcomer could join him, but Rent hasn't been back since yesterday, which they find odd. Since Rent is away, Sheila advises the new adventurer to head to the Labyrinth of the Moon's reflection. Meanwhile, back in the Labyrinth, Rent reflects on how strange it feels not to experience hunger or sleepiness. However, he's pleased that by defeating monsters, he's gained the ability to use magic and divinity, which is unusual for an undead. Divinity allows him to cure illnesses, heal injuries, purify water, and even delay food spoilage. He uses it to keep his bread fresh for an extra 3 days, hoping he'll have a living body again by then that will need it. Rent then thinks about his life so far. Despite training and studying magic and monsters every day, he has remained a below-average adventurer. His ultimate goal is to reach the highest rank, Mithril class, a level that can save entire nations and is challenging even for the naturally skilled. He reaffirms his determination to reach this rank, skeleton or not. As he continues through the labyrinth, Rent finds that he's much stronger than he was as a human. He easily defeats an enemy skeleton and a slime. While absorbing the spiritual energy of the slime, his body starts to glow and he starts to undergo a transformation. His skeletal frame is now covered in flesh. His fingers become sharp enough to cut, and his physical capabilities increase significantly. He has become a ghoul. With his new fleshly body, Rent tries to speak, but is disappointed to find his words are rough and incoherent. He realizes he'll need to practice to communicate clearly again.